What up, everybody? Happy St. Patty's Day. Hey, AMP here. Um, let's take a look at some new properties available to us in CSS. I'm talking about the calc and the new VW units that are available to us. If we combine those two together, we can create a pretty cool effect that allows us to, at any time, break our elements here, break them outside of the container that it's sitting in, and make it go full width of the browser. So I have a little demo here of what I'm talking about. So what we have is we have some text, we have a little figure tag with an image in it, and we have some more text. So this is all of this content is sitting in a container, and that container has a max width. And if we change the max width, we can see that that doesn't have any effect on the element that we're breaking out here, that we're having going full width. So this is a really cool technique. I've been using it a lot lately. It's possible because we can use the VW units, and we can use calc to calculate calculate this distance here. So let's take a look at how we came to this. So here's what we started with. We have our image here, and of course it's like any other element that's inside of a container. You change the width of the container, and it changes as well. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how we can use the negative margin trick to shoot this all the way to the left and shoot this all the way to the right, no matter what the max width is. So it's this variable space right here in between the container and the viewport, right? So VW units, VW stands for viewport width. So at any time in CSS, you can say, give me 50% of the viewport width. So you would say 50 VW, and it would return whatever half of your viewport width is. It's a really cool technique in certain situations. So in our case, what we can do is we can say, I want the margin left to be half of the viewport width, right? And whenever we do that, it shoots off the screen. And that's because what we really want to do is we really want to say, give me half of the viewport. So like right here of where my mouse is to right there. I want that. But then I also need to subtract whatever area this is highlighted in blue. So if you can imagine that, so again, where my cursor is, we want to measure from here to find out whatever half the viewport is, and then subtract that by whatever this distance is, whatever its container it's sitting in is. And that should make this component flush left with our viewport browser. So how do we do that? So we've already said negative 50W. And we can say then, but we need to reduce that by 50%. And in CSS, typically you can't do anything like that. Like we're now getting an error here. So we can accomplish this by wrapping it in a calc function. And whenever we do that, the browser figures out what half of the viewport is, and then it also figures out what half of this element's container is. It adds those two together, and it gets a negative value of some sort. So if we take a look at the CSS for it, and we go to, sorry about that, let me make this more readable here. Okay, we take a look at this, and we go to computed, we can see, and we go to margin, we can see it now has a margin left of 132 and a half pixels. So if we change this, if we set a max width of even skinnier, and we take a look at the computed value, it's now at 228.5 pixels. So dynamically calculating it based on the container size and your viewport width. Super duper powerful. So we already have our margin. Let's clean this up a little bit and apply the same role to our right margin. And now we can see that it's going full width no matter what our container is. Pretty neat stuff. We can see a simpler example of this, of how we can use this technique. So here's a header here, a styled header. And what we want from our designer says, I want this header to always be flush left with the browser on smaller screens. So typically that would have been difficult, but now that we have this new technique, we can say something like, I want you to calculate whatever negative half of the browser width and then add 50% of the container. So it takes that into account as well. And whenever I do that, both headers are flush left, no matter what size we're working with here. As you can see, it's sitting in a container that's holding this text. And the container is changing percentages, but this element is always staying put. And how we might even clean this up even further is whenever you're an important thing to utilize if you're going to be using this technique a lot is in your SAS. What you should probably do is set whatever your container width is. So in our variables, let's see here. This is our variables. I'm specifically setting a global value of whatever my content max width is. So in this case, it's going to be 60 rems. So as soon as it hits 60 rems, it's going to stop the container that holds the content. So if we know this, then we have an idea of when this technique would start to get out of hand. So as we can see, as we get too far out, this title is just getting way too separated from the content. You know, here it's fine, at mobile it's fine. Here, it's starting to get a little out of hand, and as we scroll even further back, it's starting to get way out of hand. But if we know when that point is, we can include a pretty handy breakpoint, very specific breakpoint. We can say, I want you to use this margin left trick, this calculated margin left trick, until you hit your content max width. And whenever you hit your content max width, I want to set an arbitrary value. So there we go. So how that looks now is at some point, here, let me scroll this back even further here. So on mobile, looks really nice. And then at some point, it starts to get out of hand. So we just set a static margin on it. So pretty cool. It's a pretty cool technique. I've been using it a lot. It really adds a nice, responsive, manageable layout to some elements here. So hopefully that was useful. And I have this example on CodePen. If you go to my profile, I think it's one of the first ones. Yep, it's one of the first ones on my profile. So check you later.